Well, good morning. So anyone who knows Dorset will know where I am today, I think. I've come to Milton Abbas to do a walk, probably about 10-11 mile walk, starting and finishing at Milton Abbas, which, as you will have already seen, is a picture postcard perfect village, which is beautiful and historic, but perhaps it's not all that it appears to be, let's say. But I'll tell you more about that in a minute. So it's a mixed day, sunshine and cloud, I think, and I'm starting at the church, and it promises to be a good day. Lots of good stuff to see, variety as always on my walks, variety in terms of views, villages, churches, quirky things, which I'll tell you all about on the way round. So I hope you're going to join me. It's going to be a good day and a good walk. And I'm going to start off by going inside the church, if I can get in it. I presume it's open. Just have a quick look in that church, which is Milton Abbas Church. It's a minor church compared to the one we're going to go into in a minute, but more about that later. Let's go and have a look in the church. So the church is not actually one of our ancient churches. It's actually kind of 18th century mainly, with some 19th century additions, because the village is not ancient. It's got an interesting past, which I'll explain. So yes, a lovely church, but not one of our ancient churches. Opposite is the row of almshouses as well. I have to say, something's changed in this village since I was here last. I don't think I've ever seen so much traffic coming through. Don't know if there's a detour on somewhere. Anyway, let us make a start on our walk. We're going to walk down the length of Milton Abbas village. So Milton Abbas, a picture perfect village, but it's got a history. It's actually a planned community, one of the earlier planned communities in this country, built in the 1770s by Joseph Damer. Joseph Damer was also known as Lord Milton and the first Earl of Dorchester, and the village was made up of 36 identical cottages, each housing 2 families. So there is one front door but 2 properties originally, So you go through the front door, you turn left to one and right to the other. Although that's changed in some cases. So they each housed 2 families. They were all painted yellow originally, and between each pair of cottages there used to be a chestnut tree. They were actually removed because they are regarded as being a bit dangerous. We do quite a lot of work going on here at the moment, thatching and altering some of the cottages. But the story behind it is that it was built purposely by Joseph Damer. Now he owned and lived in Milton Abbey, which is where we'll be going in a minute, and unfortunately his view from his stately home, grand stately home, was spoiled by the village of Middleton, which was in the valley. So his home looked out on this village, and he wanted to get rid of it. So he built this village and moved everybody out. He then had Capability Brown landscape his grounds and build a pond where the old village of Middleton used to be. So you could think, what a nice man. He built this beautiful picture postcard perfect village for his local community, but in truth he just wanted them out of the way. But I guess part of his legacy is that we have a beautiful village to come down and walk through. It's not quite so nice today with all this traffic. And those cottages over there are new, by the way. They are modern additions. So I've just been talking to a lady that lives in that beautiful cottage there that I just filmed as I walked past, Vicarage Cottage I think it's called, and I asked her about the traffic, and she said, well, it's got busier apparently, this village, but I believe the road to Blandford is closed, so I think traffic is detouring through the village. But that was really difficult to film. It was impossible. I don't like getting cars in because it's difficult to talk over the noise of engines, so it made it quite difficult to film. And it is a beautiful village, no doubt about that, even if it has got a history, and even if it was built for wrong purposes, shall we say, because a lot of the residents actually didn't want to leave. They didn't want the new village. They wanted to stay in their old houses in Middleton, in the valley. But they were eventually all forced out, as I understand it, in order to put the lake in, which we should see just down here, I think. I don't know if that'll come out very well on film, but the lake is just in here, and it's the lake that was put in by Capability Brown on behalf of Joseph Damer. So the valley we're walking down, and I'm really glad to have left the village in the end to get away from the traffic, but the valley that we're walking through now is where the village of Middleton would have been before it was all demolished and all the residents moved to the neighbouring valley, out of sight, out of mind, so to speak. But this path will take us through to Milton Abbey, which was the residence owned and lived in by Joseph Damer, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. So we've reached Milton Abbey, which, as the sign says, is now a private school. So, as this sign says, you can only access the Abbey or rather I should say we can only access the Abbey Church, which is the only public part. The rest of the property is private school. But the actual Milton Abbey is said to have been founded by King Athelstan way back, what would that be, 9 something? But there are those who actually doubt that, and doubt whether he actually did establish lots of monasteries and churches. You can get a view of the church now, which is where we're going. But most of the abbey buildings were demolished and rebuilt to form a private estate. The only one that I think remains is the actual Abbey Church itself. So this, if the wind's not affecting the microphone too much, is known as the Abbey Church of St Mary, St Sampson and St Branwaller. That's its full name. It dates from the 14th century. Milton Abbey is dedicated to St Mary, St Sampson and St Branwaller. It dates from the mid-14th century, being a decorated style Gothic with some 15th century parts. Of particular interest is the south window, which depicts the tree of Jesse, showing the ancestors of Jesus. Also of note is the tomb of Joseph Damer and the 15th century reredos. The church is said to have been originally established by King Athelstan in the 10th century, and was converted to a Benedictine monastery some 30 years later. This earlier medieval church, however, was burned down in 1309. So, there we are. That is a beautiful church of Milton Abbey. Sad in many ways that the rest of the Abbey buildings are not here and that we can't actually access any of the other buildings. But it's a beautiful place. So from here we've got to retrace our steps because we've taken a little detour to look at the Abbey Church, and we'll get better views of that actually as we head out on the walk. From here we can see the church building itself and we'll see the other buildings, which was the house, now private school. So brief history of Milton Abbey. It was set up originally as a Benedictine foundation. That would go way back, possibly by King Athelstan, possibly not, depending on your stance. But it became a Benedictine monastery in 964 AD. Unfortunately, the earlier medieval church burned down in 1309, so was rebuilt. So the current Abbey Church dates, as I say, from the 14th, 15th century. But it was closed down, of course, at the dissolution of the monasteries, and it became a private dwelling. So after the dissolution, it was taken over by the Tregonwell family, and there's an interesting story around that, and that is that Sir John Tregonwell fell from the roof as a child. So he fell from the roof of the abbey and yet he survived. And he was, the story goes that he was actually saved by the fact that he had on wide pantaloons, and those pantaloons acted as a kind of parachute. Just can't imagine the scene somehow, with this child floating gently down on his ballooning pantaloons. That's a good expression, ballooning pantaloons. Sir John Tregonwell. Interesting story. I like my stories, as you know, my anecdotes. Oh, let's get another view of the church. Oh. With grounds, of course, landscaped by Capability Brown. Anyway, it was taken over by the Damer family. Joseph, or one of the Damer family, bought it in 1752, and in 1771 they demolished most of the abbey buildings to make space for a new house and grounds, and all very grand. They used William Chambers as an architect and Capability Brown as the gardener, so no expense spared. So most of what we have here stems from then. So it was Joseph Damer who was responsible for most of the current buildings, apart from the Abbey Church, and for landscaping the grounds and clearing out the village that spoilt his view. Eventually the property was sold to the Hambro family. It was around about mid-1800s, and we've already come across them because the local pub is known as the Hambro Arms, named after obviously the Hambro family, and it subsequently became a school, and it still is a school, public school, hence why we can't get into any of the old buildings apart from the Abbey Church, which they have kept public. So there you go, brief history of Milton Abbey. Beautiful building, beautiful place, and we're about to leave it behind and head off out cross country. We are still within sight of the Abbey, but for the time being I've had to join the road just to do a short stretch before we go off route again. Well, what a noisy walk this is so far today. I'm nearly 3 miles in already. We've had crazy traffic on what is normally a really quiet road. Walking through the Abbey grounds, I've had all the gardeners out with all their equipment going, and now I've got helicopters buzzing around overhead. Now I've escaped into the country. So I don't know what's going on today. But isn't this a beautiful path? We can enjoy it visually, even if we're not getting the peace that we normally would. It's just lovely. And he's gone, I think. So I haven't talked about the route very much. So I'll do that here. Truth is, I don't actually know what the final route's going to be, because I'm kind of making it up as I go along, sort of. But I will put up a route map at this point so that you can see. But I've basically parked at the top of Milton Abbas, opposite the Hambro Arms, named after obviously the Hambro family. I've walked down through the village from one end to t'other, then along the valley floor through Middleton, or what was Middleton, to reach the Abbey and the grounds, etc., of what is now the school, and I'm now heading out cross country to a neighbouring village which is called Hilton, which is a lovely village which I always enjoy walking through, and it's got connections with Milton Abbey. From there I'm going to climb up onto the ridge, inland ridge, going over Bullbarrow Hill, which is a well-known viewpoint, and then I'm going to drop down a different route back into Milton Abbas, down a lovely valley, and I will probably finish up by taking in another chapel, if it all works out okay. So that's my route. You can see from the map more or less where it is, should you wish to follow me really as opposed to virtually. Anyway, that's it. I hope you enjoy following me and enjoying some peace. Beautiful. Now you can tell we're in a posh area. We've got a 5-star cattle trough. That's grand, that is. Better than the old tin bath you normally get. So we are now just coming into the lovely village of Hilton. And the helicopter's back. Old post office. What makes you think that was once a post office? Often the case, isn't it, with these villages? You have the old bakery or the old post office or whatever, and you can tell what they used to do or what they used to be. Oh, it's an interesting one. It's called the monk's house. I wonder if a monk literally lived there. That'd be interesting to know. It's one of those things that kind of intrigues me. So we'll take a little detour to look at the church. So this is the Church of All Saints at Hilton, and it's got some serious connections with Milton Abbas. The whole village has, really, because it was all once part of the Hambro estate. But we'll have a look inside. But one of the things I love about it is this lovely wild churchyard. Love the fact they left it to grow wild like this. Awesome. I think this is interesting as well. Know if that's a grave of a seafaring man. It's a nice light church, thanks to all these windows. The interesting thing about these windows is that they actually came from the cloisters at Milton Abbey. They were moved and reinstalled here. So this is a connection with the Abbey Church. And it's not the only connection either. So another part of Milton Abbey is these painted panels. There are two. There's 6 panels there. And another 6 on the other side, and they show St. Paul and the Apostles. And those also were originally part of Milton Abbey, and a much larger screen, but these 2 sections were given to Hilton Church. And as we go out, we'll see a 3rd connection. And that is this vaulted ceiling in the porch, which is also thought to have come from Milton Abbey. Beautiful fan vaulted ceiling, and it's a beautiful church in a lovely village in a lovely setting, and it's got a seat, so I might just take 5 minutes to take the weight off my feet. Lovely. Well, it's nearly 1 o'clock, so to be honest, that would normally be a good lunch spot for me, but I'm not having lunch there today because I have another lunch spot further up that I like to stop at when I do this walk. So we're going to head out of Hilton now and up through Hilton Bottom Valley, climb up onto the ridge. There's another beautiful cottage. Look at that. Not picture postcard perfect, isn't it? Beautiful. Oh, must be 1 o'clock. The church has just reminded me. Interesting cottages, I think. They look so beautiful. You think that must be really lovely living there, but I actually don't think I could cope with the dark inside because the windows are so small. In churches it's the same, other than that one, Hilton Church, because of those big windows that were inherited from Milton Abbey cloisters. They brighten it up, and I do like a bright room with sunshine coming through, and I don't think I'd get that probably from a cottage. Not I'm ever likely to live in one. Too long in the tooth to go moving now, I think. But there's more. That's another interesting one. Pound Keeper's cottage. So I assume he looked after the local pound. Oh, it's got an interesting door up there as well. Ah, interesting. Okay, that's interesting. Anybody know what they're for? Golf balls. More golf balls. More golf balls. More golf balls. And more golf balls. What are they there for? I'm intrigued. Anybody know? Put it in comments if you know what they're for. Hello. It's your lunchtime as well. You come in and say hello. It's not on the camera, will you? Bye bye. Interesting to have a chat, you see. When you walk on your own, you just have to talk to the cows and the sheep. Howdy, kidding. Mind you, I do talk to animals. I've got animals in my garden and I'm always talking to them. Neighbours will think I'm mad. See where we're going now. We're heading up to the two barns, and then the track that goes up the side of the hill is where we're heading. So the climbing starts soon to get up onto the ridge. But halfway up there, I'm going to stop and have some lunch. So I felt really sad this week to hear of the death of Michael Mosley. He was a good guy, and he was one of those guys that you kind of feel like you know somehow, or knew. And yeah, it's really sad. And he gave some really good tips that I followed, and in fact I still follow some of them in terms of keeping healthy and fit. But it does highlight to me, I think, the fragility of human life and how easy it is to lose it. Just a split second and it can all change. And we don't know, they haven't announced, as far as I know, how he died, whether it was the heat or whether he slipped and fell. I don't know, but it just makes you think how careful you need to be when you're out walking, especially as you get older. I mean, I'm pretty sure-footed and always have been, so I can walk the knife edge ridges of the Lake District and places like that, and it's something I would love to do. It's really great, but you kind of become aware as you get older that you become less sure-footed, and your balance is not quite as good as it was. And maybe that's the lesson, I suppose, really. It's not about, when you get older, it's not about not doing the things you used to do. It's more about being wise, knowing your limitations, and being extra careful. And yeah, it's kind of brings it home, I have to say, to me. Can you see why I like to stop up here for lunch? We're nearly there. I'll go up a bit further and I'll sit down and watch the view. So yeah, so I actually took a tumble recently. We were on holiday for a week in Cornwall. Myself, my son and my grandson, the three generations of men. We call ourselves the Mountain Gazelle Club, and we kind of do stuff together, mini adventures, one of which is to go away for a week during half term. So we were in Cornwall this year, went down to a beach, I think it's Trebarwith Strand, beautiful cove, lovely beach, rocky, and lots of rock pools to explore, some caves, fantastic place. And we had a great day, and we're just on our way back up off the beach to the car, which is parked slightly inland. And on you have to go up a kind of rocky ramp to get off the beach, and down the middle of this rocky path runs a stream. And we had to cross the stream in order to get up and get out. So my son crossed okay. I helped my grandson across. I got across. But for some reason, and I don't know why, I slipped. And I made sure I was treading on dry rock, not wet, because that's one of the obvious things. But somehow, I guess I must have had slime on the bottom of my sole of one of my shoes or something, and a split second and I was gone. Lost my footing and slid down into the stream, where it was even slimier. It was like a water chute, and I slid down in the water, and the only thing that stopped me from going all the way down, I think, is there was a really deep rock pool that I plonked into, and it stopped my downward progress. Fortunately I was fine. I wasn't injured at all, even if I'd slid right to the bottom. It wasn't a vertical drop or anything, so I'd probably might have had a sore bottom, but that's all. But I did lose a camera, unfortunately. I was fortunate it was an old one that I got out just for fun, really, to take with me, and that went under the water and died a death. But that simple thing just highlights how easy it is and how careful you need to be. Now, of course, it wasn't a walking holiday. I didn't have my walking pole. There were only 2 points connecting me to the ground, and that was my feet. One went, that left, one left. And that wasn't enough. Normally for me, I'd have been carrying a walking pole, so I'd had 3 points connected to the ground, and 95% certain I wouldn't have gone down. I'd have saved myself. But anyway, that's just a message, really. Take care, be wise, carry a walking pole. Anyway, I'm going to stop for lunch now, because look at this view. Bright sunshine and some nice grass to sit on. So I'm sat here blissfully enjoying this wonderful view over Hilton Bottom, and while I eat my lunch. And it's beautiful, but I've just realised that I'm already 3/4 of an hour into this video and we are only halfway round. So it's going to be an awful long video if I do it all in one. So I actually think what I'm going to do is split it into two halves, and we'll call this one the end of part 1, and we will pick up here next week for part 2, I think. So I'm going to sign off part 1 at this point and say thanks for coming with me so far. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you'll come back again next week and pick up the rest of the walk with me. But for now, this is me, the Dorset Rambler, saying until next time. Well, that was an amazing spot for lunch. Fabulous view. So we're about to leave Hilton Bottom. Okay, so I decided I'm going to go for it. I'm actually going to go across to Rosebery. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Awesome view. Well, there may not be much here, but I would say it's well worth a detour. It's just awesome. Mind-blowing views. So here's a for instance with right to roam. How difficult would it be to put a footpath in the woods rather than have you walk on the road? Ah, that's pretty good. Doesn't get much better. It's just amazing. It's a really steep-sided valley. He needs a bit of feeding, does he? And it's still raining. And I'm a tad wet because the grass is really long back there. And it's pouring it down now. Apparently, legend has it that King Athelstan camped here. And we are just reaching the last thing to see on this walk. The sun's come out again.